Hello and welcome now to the glamorous section of the Nations Cup Round 5 in the glitz and beautiful sights of Monaco. I am Chris Kavaney, your host for this event, and we are in for 4 fantastic races around the iconic layout here on the Riviera. Of all the street circuits and in general races in the world, this is the one that you most likely will want to win. So, to start all things off, let's look at the very first thing we're doing today, which is Division 2, and we can look at the driver standings for that going in to this race, and we can see that Pato O'Ward has his 10-point lead over Felix Rosenqvist's rival, so it seems so far this season. Robert Wickens has been very steady and consistent, only behind them by 10 points to Rosenqvist. Buemi has been very shaky, but he is still putting in good results. Jamie Whincup, very consistent for Australia. Raffaele Marcello in 6th. Kevin Magnussen in 7th. Felipe Albuquerque had a great start to this season. He's trailed off a bit, but he's still not far behind in 40 points. Will Power had a very good race, along with Jamie Whincup in the Saxon Ring last time out. He is on 39. Antonio Felix da Costa and 39 points as well. Stefan Riquelme on 38. Sasa Fenestraz on 37. Felipe Nasr on 37 as well. Then we look at Arthur Leclerc, home race for him as well as Riquelme, to be fair, on 35. He'll want to do something this weekend. And we have Marcus Ericsson behind him, Christian Lundgaard, Leonardo Fornaroli, Kelvin van der Linde, James Hinchcliffe, Sheldon van der Linde, Nico Veroni, and Bruno Senna, Antonio Fuoco, and then we got Mahavira Gunathan, Rafael Villagomez, and Narain Kazakian all on 0 points. But then we can see on the nations standings we have Sweden on top only by 1 point to Switzerland, and we have Australia not far behind them either on 90, Portugal a bit further away on 79, Mexico 77, Canada 75, Monaco 73, Denmark on 68, Argentina on 46, as well as Brazil. We have South Africa on 35, Italy on 34, and India with nothing. But before we start all the races and so on and so forth, we have to mention a few driver changes that are taking place. Over at Italy, there's been a driver swap due to Antonio Fuoco taking a penalty. Antonio Giovinazzi is going to be taking that seat over there. And then over at Team Brazil, it's just a generic driver change. Rafael Camara is coming in now for Bruno Senna due to some potential lackluster performances. And we also have Roman De Angelis at Canada, who's been taking the seat from James Hinchcliffe. So now all of that is out of the way, we can look at the Division 2 sprint grid, and we have Nico Verone on top, starting there with Leonardo Fornaroli alongside him, and then Sebastian Buemi in 3rd, Antonio Felix da Costa in 4th, Antonio Giovinazzi with his first race in 5th, not too bad, and then we have Felix Rosenqvist, the championship rival of Pato O'Ward, in 6th, Arthur Leclerc, the homeboy, in 7th, and then we have Will Power next to him in 8th, Roman De Angelis in 9th, and Kevin Magnussen in 10th, Rafael Camara in 11th, Marcello in 12th, Kelvin van der Linde, first of the South African cars, in 13th, Lundgaard in 14th, Jamie Whincup in 15th, and then we have Marcus Ericsson in 16th, Pato O'Ward, the championship leader, down in 17th. That's a bit of a whoopsie from him there. And then Robert Wickens in 18th. Stefan Riquelme, unlike his compatriot, is down in 19th. It's not a great performance for him there for the home crowd. Felipe Nasr in 20th, Sheldon van der Linde in 21st, Felipe Albuquerque in 22nd, Rafael Villagomez in 23rd, Sasha Fenestras in 24th. Then both the India cars at the back with Mahavira Gunathan in 25th and Narain Kazakian in 26th. Now let's show the first race of Monaco. Ryan, take it from here.
And we're here now for the first race of the day. It's Division 2 Sprint here in Monaco. The lights are coming up on the board. It's first light, second light, third light, fourth light, fifth light. And we're away here in Monaco. It's Verone, but Fornaroli gets a better start. He goes first into Sandoval. And round the outside comes Buemi into second as well. So a poor start from Verone as they come up Boule Rivage. Da Costa in 4th with Giovinazzi in 5th position. But it is a fantastic getaway from Fornaroli. Coming down into the hairpin for the first time. And it is Buemi already starting to eat into that very quick advantage that he made up, but still, as they come through the tunnel for the first time, let's see what the gap is on these early laps. Through the chicane they go, and that's Rosenqvist having a little bit of a lock-up maybe into the chicane, and that looks like Kazakian saying that he's hit the wall, something I saw there, and has lost his front wing. So the already back marker Narenka Kane having to make a trip to the pits potentially as they come through Larascas and through Anthony Nose for the first time to complete the first lap. So Fornarelli leads, as we can see there as we ride on board. Here is Verone, the pole sitter for this race. Not the best of starts, and it is confirmed there from Verone. He has got Da Costa all over the back of him. Carthagena, there we go, confirmed. Going into pit lane for a front wing change. So, in these opening stages of this race, it definitely seems like Fornarelli and Buemi have a bit of a pace advantage over Verone. If we look back to one of the home heroes, that is Riquelme in 18th position. He's got Robert Wickens all over the back of him. Riquelme hoping for a little bit of a better performance here on home soil. Currently sits outside the points. Back on board with Verone. Third position still with Da Costa all over the back of him as they come through Larascas. And so Ward with a lock-up into the swimming pool section. So a Ward with a lock-up, that's allowed Riquelme all over the back of him now. Fornarelli with yet another fastest lap of the race. This being the first flying lap. So come streaming through. Here's Buemi coming up through Casino Square by the looks of things. Arthur Leclerc up in 6th position. And he has Rosenquist for company. Giovinazzi just ahead of him as well. Team Italy having a good showing here at the moment. With Fornarelli out front still, 1.4 seconds ahead of Buemi. Verone still falling away from these two, and that's a lock up there from Ericsson into the chicane. So Ericsson holding on to that 15th position. And there's a big backup going on there, and who's gone off? It's Giovinazzi. So Giovinazzi from 5th position goes into the wall at the back. He's lost his rear wing. Oh, and he's been hit for good measure there. So who was that? That was one of the Swiss cars, so I think that was Rosenquist that made contact there. So he's potentially got damage. So, as I was saying, commentator's curse there was looking like a good day for Team Italy. They still have got one car in the lead at the moment, but their second car in Giovinazzi is now out of the race. So they stream down the start-finish straight one more time. Obviously, a big gap now formed between Da Costa and Leclerc as a result of that incident at the swimming pool, or to back section, sorry. Rosenquist obviously carrying on, so it wasn't damage to Rosenquist's car. But Verone still just about happy in 3rd position. He still has Da Costa just behind him, as there's a few more people tripping over each other through the hairpin. And that looks to be Magnussen and Cameron. No, it isn't. It's Lundgaard and Ericsson actually, 13th and 14th position. Just ahead of him is Raffaele Marcellis, Pato Award. Almost having a coming together there. I believe that's Wing Cup just up ahead. And Varone into the wall. So Varone has a lock up into Anthony Nodes and goes into the barriers. He's lost his front wing now. And he's going to have to go an entire lap with part of his front wing missing. Just disappears from shot there, but there he is. He's going to have to limp his way back, and this is going to slow the rest of the pack up even more now. So Leclerc, who had already dropped off the back of the rest of the field as a result of Giovinazzi's retirement, is going to lose even more time as a result of Varone limping back to pit lane, but he's managed to dispatch of him pretty quickly there into Mirabeau. And Da Costa having a bit of a lock up there, but just about misses the wall. So Da Costa lives to fight on for another day. Still plenty of laps left to go in this sprint race. It's a long old sprint race, the longest on the calendar most likely, in terms of time. And there's another load of shenanigans going on at the chicane, once again involving Lundgaard at the moment. But I think that is all as a result of everyone tailing up behind Varone. Varone dropping down the field like a sack of spuds pretty much there. Down into 10th he is now, but he's going to be towards the back end. Although, interestingly, I wonder if he'll still come out ahead of Karthikeyan at the back of the field. So Varone has managed to make it back to pit lane. And that's Camera having a bit of an incident. So Rafael Camera in his first race for Team Brazil, replacing Bruno Senna. Interestingly, well, a bit of an interesting replacement really, as it stands, Bruno Senna still holds the second division, i.e. Formula 2 GP2 lap record of Monaco. So interesting times to swapping out, but we'll see how Camera goes. Back on board with the home hero, Riquelme, 16th position, and that's going through on someone else going slow. And that looks like this Team Sweden car, and it's Marcus Ericsson coming to a stop just before the chicane, and that's an awkward position. It's a transmission failure. So he comes streaming through out of the swimming pool section into La Rascasse, and this is Raffaele Marcello of Team Switzerland, who's hunting down one of the South African cars, and it is the 10th place position of Calvin van der Linde, who's the last points paying position. Here's his countryman Boemi as Nasser sives his way back up into another position. That's P16 I believe now, as he goes ahead of Riquelme. Oh, that's another incident going on. That's Ragunathan involved with someone else. That's Riquelme being hit, so we caught the back end of that. So that's Riquelme up in 17th position as they go up the hill. It looks like he's already having an issue there as they come up through Beau Rivage and gets hit there by the Indian driver. Hit again, actually, by what I think was Fuoco. Sorry, it isn't Fuoco because Fornarelli's in the lead. This was one of the Team Italia cars, was it? No, it's Mexico. So, big accident there for the local driver. And that's his sprint race over. And wonder, no further action. So, interesting there. I was somewhat wondering if we were going to see a penalty dished out there, but obviously the stewards think otherwise in that situation. Here is Boemi in second position, trying to hunt down Fornarelli. Most teams going with the same setup option across the board, and so it basically all comes down to the upgrades, drivability, and the upgrades that they've chose in the most recent turn of upgrade sequence. It is on board with one of the drivers being followed by the Argentinian driver. Didn't quite catch who that was, but we're back with Buemi coming down, and that is Verone recovering, but still locking up into La Rascasse. So not the greatest day at the office so far for the Argentine driver. Here's Marcello having a little bit of a incident down at the hairpin. Still chasing down Kelvin van der Linde for that final points paying position. Down to the hairpin, the chicane they come. They've still got Lundgaard, Whincup and O'Ward for company as well. So can't afford any mistakes there, and that's a mistake there for Da Costa. So Da Costa, in his efforts to chase down Buemi, making a mistake there into the Rascasse, and that allows Leclerc to get a little bit closer, but he's still got quite a long breath of fresh air between the pair of them. But here at the front is Fornarelli of Italy. So nice commanding lead there for the Italian, 3.2 seconds, which is quite a large advantage here in Monaco, being the short circuit that it is. Here's back to Da Costa in third position. And the front three drivers fairly spaced out. Obviously Da Costa with plenty of breathing room as a result of the incidents beforehand, but there's Lundgaard getting it all locked up coming into the corner just before the tunnel, which is Portier. So almost allowing a sniff there from Whincup, but not managing to get through there. Still back with Da Costa, who's trying to eke into Buemi's advantage in second position, but it seems whatever effort the Portuguese driver makes, he seems to unravel it with a mistake. Here is further back. This is Sheldon van der Linde following Nasser at the moment. Nasser holding on to his seat in the Team Brazil, scoring some points along the way, but is currently being outshone at the moment by his new teammate. Buemi still keeping the gap relatively the same between himself and Fornarelli ahead. Actually saying that he's lost 0.4 of a second, and similar for Da Costa, so Fornarelli having a bit of a push lap this time round, it seems. And Verone still having lockups in his attempts to try and catch up onto the back end of the field. He isn't too far away from Albuquerque, so Albuquerque, our first race winner essentially, winning the sprint in Britain at Silverstone. Not having a good day at the office for sure, as his teammate Da Costa is sat in third position, still trying to chase down Buemi, and that's Rosenquist having, well, I'm not sure what happened there. It sounded like he missed a gear or shifted down a gear too many there. Coming through into Massenet. He's still in the hunt after Leclerc just up ahead. So not too far between them there, as we see Buemi the gap ebbing and flowing between Fornarelli and Buemi. Here's Regunifon in 19th position ahead of Villagomez. And making a mistake there and getting hit by Villagomez. Villagomez going to try around the outside, but no such luck. As they come through Portier, and that's Kelvin van der Linde. So van der Linde with a missing front wheel, and he was helped off there, it seemed, and then collected once again by one of the Team Australia cars, and that was Whincup by the looks of things. So that was Marcello down the inside, punts him off, he goes straight on, but then a fairly interesting way to try and rejoin the track sees van der Linde being collected and having his front wheel well and truly ripped off. So I'm not sure how the stewards will see that. It's potentially going to be a penalty for Marcello. And there is the confirmation. 10-second penalty and a grip drop. For the Swiss driver. So any chances of a top 10 well and truly gone there for Marcello. That will promote Lundgaard as it stands. Whincup has lost a fair amount of time as well as a result of that incident. Marcello has, and he's sitting over 3 seconds behind De Angelis. De Angelis, another debutant here for Team Canada. He's replacing James Hinchcliffe. And that's another lock up there, that's Camera. Still holding on to their 8th position ahead of De Angelis. Here with, I think, is Verone. So Verone, having pitted, has made his way up into 21st position, and Will Power has got an engine failure. So there it is, smoke billowing out the back end of that car. Power in 7th position, but he's probably going to be experiencing a lack of power sometime soon with that engine failure. And here he comes to rest at Mirabeau. So what was looking to be a promising result for the Australian will come to an end. But there's still time left in the day. There is still a feature race remaining for him to try and score some points. That's where the big points are scored. But that has also promoted Lundgaard into the points and essentially Whincup as a result of Marcello having that penalty over his head. Fornarelli's got an incident and he's gone off. I just saw Buemi go into the lead. And obviously he's slow, and you can see Buemi's managed to cut that 3-second advantage, and he's come to a slow there at the entrance of Le Rascasse. Now, what was the issue here? We'll see confirmation. It's a brake failure. He was not too far away from pit lane as well, so that's even worse for the Italian driver. So what was looking like a great day to start off with for Team Italy sees both drivers out of this sprint race. And that looks like an issue there for one of the... It is Leclerc, so something is wrong with the car, he's saying. So Leclerc has come to slow, and Rosenquist has gone up into 3rd position. Buemi with a fairly comfortable lead, although I say comfortable, not necessarily the word to be using, seeing as how the previous leader went out, and that's Nazar having a lock up there into Massenet. You don't want to be doing that too often. But still carries on there in 13th position. He's got Wickens and O'Ward just up ahead. Essentially, that is a net 12th position with Marcello's penalty hanging over him. Here's Da Costa in 2nd position. He's going to be chasing after. When we just, oh sorry, that isn't Da Costa. That's his fellow countryman. So here is Leclerc still limping back to pit lane by the looks of things. Again, the rest of the field all having to slow up. And is that, has the car failed? The car has failed just before the pit entry for Leclerc. And there's someone off in the background. That's one of the Brazilian drivers. That's Nazar off in the background. So that looks to me like a possible lock-up into Rascasse. It is. Both wheels locked up and into the barrier he goes. Lost the front wing. He's still got an engine by the sounds of things, so he can reverse, hopefully, and go to pit lane. But that's any chance of points down the drain there for part of Brazil. You still have newcomer Camara in 5th position, and that's Buemi out! Sebastian Buemi, as we see, coming down into the hairpin. It looks like coming out of the hairpin, he's just been a bit too overzealous. He's locked it up, lost the rear wheel. So Buemi out from the lead. That promotes Da Costa into the lead, so that's 2 leaders gone out of the race. Rosenqvist up into 2nd, Magnussen in 3rd. And Camara in 4th position. He's going to be crossing his fingers, toes, anything that anyone else ahead of him goes out, because he'll be getting a podium on debut at this rate. So here is your new race leader. I have to refrain from saying comfortably in the lead, because the last 2 leaders who I said were comfortably in the lead are no longer in this race. So Da Costa currently leading by 7.2 seconds. Has Rosenqvist and Magnussen behind him, but some distance behind. Rosenqvist, who hasn't had the best of luck recently. A few reliability gremlins affected him in the previous races. Here's O'Ward going a little bit wide out of Casino Square, and he has Robert Wickens for company. This is the battle for 9th and 10th position. So they come through Portier and down the tunnel one more time. We go back to Rosenqvist, who's all on his own at the moment, but he is still going to find himself scoring ahead of most of his rivals in this championship. And there's Felipe Albuquerque there, now in 15th position as a result of many people retiring and having issues ahead of him. Interestingly, that looks like Veroni's managed to catch up onto the back of him. So one of the drivers who was pretty much making himself out to look like one of the favourites in this championship is seems to be struggling in this current phase of the championship. Still, drivers battling just as hard up the front and at the rear, it seems, at the moment. There are no points available in these positions at the back, but you wouldn't have thought that with the way they're battling with each other. Magnussen 9 seconds ahead of the Brazilian camera. And Wickens is calling he's got a puncture. He's being told to retire the car. He's too far away from pit lane, and there he is. He's had to retire the car just before the hairpin there. So that's put Sheldon van der Linde into 10th position. And Fenestraz actually could be scoring points here, with Marcello having his penalty. Here is the newcomer of De Angelis, who's chasing down the other rookie to this championship of Camera. So this is the battle for 4th and 5th as we go further on down the order. At O'Ward, who's trying to chase after Whincup. And that's Karthikeyan out. So Karthikeyan, who had already had to pit earlier through damage to the car, had made his way up into, I think that was the top 15 actually, as a result of everyone else's issues. But that is the end of the Indian drivers' race for the sprint, that is. Here is Rosenquist still attempting to close in on Da Costa, but still a bridge too far for the Swedish driver. There's a lockup just ahead there. That was Lundgaard getting it all wrong into Portier. That's allowing Whincup to have a little bit of a sniff, but that was all it was. Not quite close enough to capitalise and take that 7th position. Back up the front, Antonio Felix da Costa leads this sprint race. 2 laps to go for the Portuguese driver. And there's Camera getting it locked up and hitting the barrier on the exit of Anthony Nodes. That's allowed De Angelis all over the back of him. But it seems like he's just about safe enough to hold on to that 4th position. The team telling him to take it easy. He's just got 2 laps to hold on to this 4th position. Both drivers having a stellar performance in their debuts. He's got on the road Marcello just behind him, but obviously doesn't need to worry about him. Lundgaard just behind that. De Angelis in the slipstream of Camera through the tunnel. Still not quite close enough for a lunge into the chicane. Magnussen pretty much happily on his own at the moment. Although it's saying that from a driver's perspective, no one to challenge for another position, so fairly boring position from that standpoint. Here is Albuquerque. 14th position, he's got Verone. In 15th, just behind him. And De Angelis with a little bit of a lock up there. As we are on the final lap of the race, can De Angelis muster or dig deep and find anything more to try and take this 4th position off a Camera? It's going to take a lot of doing to do so. Here's Magnussen, comfortable in 3rd position, and even more comfortable out in front is Antonio Felix da Costa, who just has to round the swimming pool section and negotiate Larascas and Anthony Knows, and he will find himself crossing the line in first position. Round they come one more time. It's just Anthony Knows to go. And he locks up into the barriers! But still, just about holds on. Antonio Felix da Costa crosses the line to win here in Monaco for the Div 2 sprint. Rosenqvist crosses the line in second, with Magnussen in third, Camera in fourth, and De Angelis has lost quite a lot of time there, so he must have made a mistake somewhere during that lap. Marcello crosses the line in sixth, but with penalties lingering over him, he's going to be demoted outside of the points. Gunafin crosses the line, Villagomez, Varone, I think, well, Felipe Nasr, the last driver to cross the line. In 16th position. And that is that for the sprint race. Confirmation there, Antonio Felix da Costa just about manages to win that race ahead of Felix Rosenqvist, Kevin Magnussen in third, Camera on debut in fourth, with De Angelis also on debut in fifth, Lundgaard in sixth, Whincup seventh, O'Ward eighth, Sheldon van der Linde in ninth, Fenestraz promoted into 10th position as a result of Marcello's penalty. Marcello finishes 11th, Gunafin in 12th. Going further down, Albuquerque in 14th, Varone 15th, Nasr, the final driver to finish the race, in 16th, and the long list of retirements goes Carthagena, Wickens, Buemi, Leclerc, Fornarelli, Power, Calvin van der Linde, Stefan Ricalmi, Marcus Ericsson, and Antonio Giovinazzi. And, well, after that hectic Division 2 sprint, it's back over to Chris.
That is 3 sprint wins out of 5 for Portugal this season. Congratulations to them. That's a pretty good effort from there. And it is gut-wrenching for both Leonardo Fornarelli and Sebastian Buemi, but they can more than make up for it in the feature race, which is coming up. But now we can head over to Division 1. And much like we did earlier, we'll look at the driver standings for that. Philip Hansen is comfortably in the lead. Well, asterisk on the comfortably, because we've got so much that can happen this season. And to Scott Dixon with 58 points, 21 behind. And then Alex Palou in hot pursuit there, and 53 points. Naoki Yamamoto again being consistent on 52. Rene Rast in 50 points with much help from Saxon Ring. Carl Larson in 46. Sebastian Bourdais in 44. Sandy Stuvik, who's been very, very good this season, on 41. Alex Dunn 39. Daniel Kadea 37, Simon Pagenaud 35, Joseph Newgarden 31, Shane Van Gisbergen, the other Kiwi driver, on 30 points, and then we can see that both Scottish cars, Jack Aitken and Paul di Resta, are both on 29, Nick de Vries on 27, Dries van Toor on 24, Andre Lotterer on 22, we have Max Hart also on 22, James Collado 20, Stoffel van Dorn 16 with a great introduction to the Nations Cup last round, and then we have Elfyn Evans and Ella Lloyd with 12 and 16 points, Teletoka Makino 5, Lamington Forder on 3, Mark Cousins on 1, and then at the rear we have Nathalie Wantala-Farragle on 1, and then on 0 we have Kamui Kobayashi as Alex Lynn, Vanita X and Robin Frines. And then when we look at the nations standings, and England are on top on 99 points, Spain only 9 behind on 90 points, New Zealand only 11 behind England on 88 points, France on 79 points, USA 77, Germany with 72, Ireland in 7th place with 61 points, Scotland with 58, Japan on 57, Thailand on 42, Belgium with 41, Netherlands on 30 points, and Wales bringing up the rear with 18 points. And there is only one driver change of note to mention for Division 1, and that is that Team Germany, Andre Lotterer, is sitting out this round due to a race ban. Mick Schumacher will be racing around the glorious streets of Monaco. Now we can see what the Division 1 sprint grid looks like, and Alex Palou starts on the front row with Stoffel van Dorn in 2nd place, Kamui Kobayashi right behind them in 3rd, Daniel Kadea in 4th, Rene Rast in 5th, Robin Frines in 6th, much needed 6th for the Netherlands, they need all the points they could get, Simon Pagenaud in 7th, Sandy Stuvik in 8th, Shane Van Gisbergen and Scott Dixon starting 9th and 10th, Naoki Yamamoto in 11th, Alex Dunn in 12th, Max Hart in 13th, Mick Schumacher for his debut for the Nations Cup in 14th, Philip Hansen in 15th, Joseph Newgarden in 16th, Carl Larson in 17th, Elfyn Evans in 18th, Sebastian Bourdais in 19th, De Rest 20th, De Vries 21st, Jack Aitken 22nd, James Collado down in 23rd, Natalie Lee-Wendell Avaragal in 24th, Dries van Tor starts 25th, and Ella Lloyd in 26th. And now it's back to Ryan Ferris for the Division 1 sprint race.
We're back again for the Div 1 sprint, and it is recently crowned IndyCar champion Alex Palou on pole from Stoffel Van Dorn in seconds. The lights are coming on, and out they go. It's a good start from Alex Palou, and Kobayashi making a good start as well. Van Dorn has to slot down into third position. There's a few side-by-side accidents, and that's Liwat Naragu out already before they even make the first corner. And she was definitely helped there. We'll have to have another replay there to see who was behind that. It's one of the Team America cars there. I think that was Larson. But the stewards are definitely on top of it, so we will find out later. But it's still Alex Palou ahead of Kamui Kobayashi of Japan, and it was indeed Carl Larson who's been disqualified from the race as a result of that. And there's more incidents going on. In Tamirabo, there was definitely a car losing a front wing there. This is Elfyn Evans. So Evans in 24th position, I think, behind Carl Larson. Larson goes down the inside, and it's a collision between the two teammates. So that is front wing damage for the Welsh driver, and he will have to make his way back to pit lane for a front wing change. This is Simon Pagenaud in 5th position, chasing down Rene Rast. But it is still Palou in the lead. Kobayashi still staying within a second at the moment on this opening lap. But unlike other championships, there is no DRS involved in this one. It is just pure skill from the driver in order to make the overtake here in Monaco. Up comes Van Dorn. A brilliant addition to Team Belgium. Again, some people may argue should have come a bit sooner, but they're definitely reaping the rewards of this fine Belgian driver, and that's Van Gisbergen with a lockup into Mirabeau. Van Gisbergen on a high after his NASCAR win. It's potentially going to be a reality check here in Monaco for the New Zealand driver. In the background, that is Bourdais all over the back of Lloyd. Bourdais going up the inside of Lloyd, actually, and that's a brilliant move into the chicane. Van Dorn still actually up into... Looks like an issue there for Kobayashi. Kobayashi pitting. I was going to say Van Dorn up into 2nd position, but definitely an issue there for Kobayashi to find himself pitting at the end of lap 2. Yamamoto is also in the pit, so it's a Japanese 1-2 into the pit lane, so something has been an issue for the pair of them. We'll have to find out. I think I'll have to send the pit lane reporter, that is Chris, to find out that one, but as we carry on here, we are looking at Alex Dunn on the back of Stuvik. And Stuvik will lock up there. but still holds on to that 9th position. Allows Dixon to get away further on up the road as he chases Robin for Frines. Here is Stuvik. Just about holding on. There's a move going on in the background. That was a bit of a banzai move, and that was Aitken on Hart. By the looks of things, you see just about in 15th position. Mick Schumacher making his Cup debut. He is subbing in for Andre Lotterer, who is serving a race ban following his accumulation of penalty points so far this season. Below 2.8 seconds ahead, and that's Stuvik. Again, sounding like changing down one too many gears up into Massenet. That's not going to help the engine or gearbox at all, but no big issue there, and has managed to catch up onto the back of Dixon. So you can see Schumacher getting it all wrong now on the approach to Portier. So Schumacher just about hanging on ahead of Newgarden. And Newgarden's having a look up the inside. Ooh, that was far too close for my liking. And that's Dries van Voor off. So Dries van Voor with a rear wheel missing. Now what has happened there? And that is De Vries behind, and De Vries making contact. And that's caused a chain reaction. That's Larson going off into the barriers. Not that that matters too much because he's been disqualified, but De Vries thought he saw a gap there, but that gap closed pretty quickly. So Dries van Voor definitely not happy with De Vries. And that is a disqualification there for De Vries. And who's that going off for the Netherlands? Sorry, it isn't the Netherlands. It is Shane van Gisbergen with a failure. So Van Gisbergen coming up into Sander Vot, and the car just fails on him there. Is it another transmission failure? We'll see confirmation as the field streams past the New Zealander. And it is indeed a transmission failure. It seems to be the weak point in this championship. We saw many transmission failure in Germany last time out. So look, this is Simon Pagenaud hunting down René Rast for the final podium position. Danny Junkadea not far behind these two. Here's Van Dorn, the sole remaining Belgian driver. He is also holding on to second position. Mick Schumacher being lunged there by Newgarden. Still hanging on just about. Here's Jack Aitken with a bit of... Oh, there's a smoke there. That's Hart, I think. Yes, it's Max Hart. Max Hart with an engine failure. And even if he does try to make it back to pit lane, which he avoids, there is no way that the team are going to manage to recover that. And oh, crowding De Vries out there for a moment. That's not going to be looked upon too kindly by the stewards. The field, well, attempts to come streaming through. Yamamoto sets the fastest lap, and that's auto close to for my lighting, and that's I think Ella Lloyd trying to get through there, and does so eventually, and there's all very messy indeed as the field tries to make its way past the slow moving Ireland driver. So here is René Rast, who is still being closed in upon by Simon Pagenaud, and Hart's just about, finally decides to pull over just before the chicane. And confirmation there, if you didn't realise already, that was an engine failure. Back to Rast in third position. How can he respond to Pagenaud, who is still closing? It is down to a second, and that's Aitken getting it all wrong onto the approach into Massenet. It's another lock-up. Schumacher just behind him, 13th. But as it stands, both Scottish drivers just on the outside of the points. There's Van Dorn again. And you can see in the background now, there is definitely not much gap between Rast and Pagenaud. Pagenaud is now all over the back of the German driver. Aitken with another lock-up. He's really not enjoying this lap at the moment. More lock-ups up ahead. That looked like Hansen actually. I think he had a slight brush of the barrier. Back on board as we head up the hill through Beau Rivage with Stoffel Van Dorn, second position, still losing track of Alex Palou, who's slowly disappearing in the distance. There's been another change of position as Larsson's managed to get his way up into 15th position, so I don't know if there's been some form of failure further on down the back of the field. Schumacher having a few issues on turn-in for the hairpin. Schumacher still trying to get to grips with this Cup car. It's very similar to what he's driven in Grand Prix World Series, however, doesn't quite have the same level of performance. Simon Pagenaud! Pagenaud! What's happened to him? So Simon Pagenaud comes through and has a puncture in the swimming pool section, so that promotes Danny Juncker into 4th position. Gives a little bit more breathing space to René Rast in 3rd. But at the moment it is nil points for France. And De Resta's claiming a broken front wing, so after just being promoted into the points, he's going to be relinquishing that singular point. Here's René Rast. And can see Van Dorn just ahead, so I'm not sure if Van Dorn has an issue here. Gap still just over, or just shy of 3 seconds actually. In the meantime, Jack Aitken up into 10th position and the final points paying position. Yamamoto, a few laps ago, took the fastest lap after having to pit alongside Kobayashi for whatever issue they had. this is Dixon under pressure from Stuvik. Stuvik, who has been one of the surprising drivers of this championship, has found himself towards the front almost every race. Hasn't necessarily had the luck though. Here's Di Resta fresh out of pit lane and locking up on those fresh tyres, so not the best start to a stint that he would want. Managed to come out ahead of Elfyn Evans. And that's Palou going... Oh, sorry, he's just going through the hairpin, and that's Lloyd into the barriers. For a moment then, I thought Palou was breaking down, but he was going through the hairpin, which is one of the slowest corners on the calendar. But Evans having to pit once again, so an issue for Evans, who's already pitted for a front wing. De Vries getting it all wrong through Portier. He's chasing down Carl Larson, although the pair of them, doesn't matter what happens in this race, as Newgarden has a bit of a lock-up through the swimming pool section. Bit of an odd place to have a lock-up, as that is generally flat out for the drivers. But we're at half race distance, and it's still Alex Palou who leads almost 4.5 seconds ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn and René Rast in third position. Meanwhile, here is Scott Dixon chasing down Robin Freins. He has also got Sandy Stuvik just behind. And saying that, Stuvik's into the barriers. I was going to say for a moment then it looked like Stuvik had disappeared. And indeed he has. So what has happened there? Sounds like another transmission failure. So the Monaco marshals very quick to get rid of that car. And it was a puncture actually, so that developed quite quickly. In fact, some of the punctures have developed quite quickly in this race, it seems. And Hansen is retiring. The electrics have gone, so he's had to pull one side at the swimming pool section there. And the marshals once again craning the car off the circuit. That's another position gained, and that promotes Newgarden into 10th position. Mick Schumacher in 9th and Jack Aitken in 8th. Kobayashi having all sorts of issues again. Up into Massenet. Back with Stoffel Van Dorn, who has René Rast attempting to chase him down, but still a little bit of breathing space there as we go to Nick de Vries getting it all locked up into the chicane. And he has Sebastian Bourdais all over the back of him. Bourdais in a fairly surprising position actually this race. He's been quite quick in his qualifications. It just hasn't seemed to have transpired. As that is De Vries getting it all wrong into Anthony Nose, and he's lost his front wing. So that's how they had Bourdais through. Lloyd and Kobayashi are to follow through just after that. And there's contact again. That's 2 cars off. One of them is the Team England car. I think that's James Collado. So what's happened here? So Collado goes around the outside, and it just seems like De Vries is just pulled in front of him. Collado nowhere to go in that situation, it seemed. So Collado goes around the outside, and De Vries just swerves in front of him. So De Vries already with issues, out of the race. So hopefully for the Englishman that is Collado, there's been no lasting damage caused by that incident. There is no front wing damage somehow for Collado, even though that was a hefty whack from De Vries, as Scott Dixon chases down his countryman of Robin Frines but locks up in the process. Back with, from briefly, Stoffel Van Dorn, who has lost even more time for Palou. Palou putting on a dominant performance here in Monaco. Oh, and that's Junkerdale off. Junkerdale, what's happened there? Has he spun on the outside? Looks like he has spun on yes. So on the exit of the hairpin, he gets on the power, lights it up too early, and around he goes. That was 4th position, but he's now dropping his way down the order, hits the barrier in his attempt to try and spin turn, so that's been a big fat failure right there. He's now got Aitken, Schumacher, Newgarden going through, Larsson's going up. He's pretty much going to have to wait for the whole field to filter its way through before he can then decide to put it into reverse and back on the go, and it hits the barrier again and again. Bit of comedy going there on the team radio as what was a pretty much nailed on 4th position leads to 0 points for the Spanish driver. It's not so much the issue for his teammate Palou, who has got 5 laps to go in this sprint race. Here's Van Dorn again being chased down by Ras. Ras still managing to keep himself in shot, but not closing in enough to try and make a move for that position. All we can hope for is a mistake from the Belgian driver. Here is Rast that we drive with now through the chicane, and he can see his opponent Larsson running in 10th position, but obviously he has that disqualification hanging over him from the start incident, so that will promote Bourdais into 10th position. Bourdais, who is a little over, well, a couple of seconds ahead of Lloyd. Newgarden with a lock up there in 9th position. Still just about holding on. There's Schumacher just up ahead. Here is Alex below, 5.2 seconds ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn. There's Evans, who's recovering from his incident earlier, having a bit of a lock-up through the swimming pool there. Is Palo, and that's someone was stopping for a moment there. There's a bit of a lock-up or some form of tyre squeal, which generally isn't something you want to be hearing. But based on the timing tower, everyone still holding station. Oh, and that's Lloyd. What has happened there? The front wing is just disintegrated. Hello, Lloyd, coming through the swimming pool section, has found part of the front wing missing. That's Younger Daya recovering from that spin. And Lloyd's coming to pit lane, but down in 17th position. And as you can see, coming through to back and into the swimming pool section, definitely pushing. Jack Aitken in 7th position, just ahead of Mick Schumacher. Just further behind him is Joseph Newgarden. Here's Alex Palou, rounding the Rascasse and Anthony Nose for yet another time to take off another lap. 3 laps to go in this sprint race. Here is James Calado just ahead of Paul di Resta. Here's Ras still closing in on Van Dorn, but I still fear it's going to be too little too late for the German driver. Palou still up in the lead, 5.6 seconds is the advantage. Junkadale with another lock-up and just grazing the barriers into Sandoval. He's going to have Evans for company soon if he carries on this way. But here is Alex Palou about to start the second to last lap of this race. It has so far been a commanding lead, 5.8 seconds to Van Dorn. And Aitken's out the race. So what has happened to Aitken? I assume it's going to be a punctual suspension failure of some sort. And he's hit the wall and hit the wall once again, so rear wing or rear wheel lost, shall I say, coming through the swimming pool section. So Team Scotland, that looked to be on for points, has now missed out. So this is the battle for the back end of the field. René Rast still in that third position. Here is Alex Palou. 2 corners to go, and then he'll find himself starting the final lap of the race. Round he comes. Ticks over to 19 laps completed of the 20. He's just got to sit back and not relax too much, but pretty much stroke it home. This is Evans and Lloyd, they're 16th and 17th. Yunkadea holding on to that 15th position. Just ahead of Lloyd. But here is Alex Palou coming down into the chicane for the final time. Through to back the swimming pool section just after that. He's navigated that with ease. He's now just got the Raskas and Anthony Noakes. He's passed through that just fine. Is he going to lock up into the barriers? No, he's not going to copy Da Costa. Alex Palou comes across the line to win the Division 1 sprint race. Stoffel Van Dorn comes through in second with René Rast in third. Here's Robin Freins for fourth position with Scott Dixon just behind to round out the top 5. Alex Dunn of Ireland with another safe result there of 6th position. And Schumacher crosses the line, 7th position with the engine smoking. Kobayashi actually makes up the final points with Larson's disqualification. Here's Ella Lloyd, 15th position. I believe it is Elvin Evans to be the last to cross the line. Actually, here is Danny Yunkadea. Between that, and here is Evans. Final car to cross the line. Race over, and confirmation that Alex Palou wins the Division 1 sprint race ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn, René Rast, Robin Freins in 4th, and Scott Dixon rounding up the top 5. Alex Dunn in 6th place. Mick Schumacher on smoke and fire across the line to 7th. Joseph Newgarden in 8th, Sebastian Bourdais in 9th, and Kobayashi rounds out the final points paying position in 10th. Yamamoto 11th, Collado 12th, and De Resta in 13th. Ella Lloyd 14th with Daniel Yunkadea in 15th after that spin from 4th position. Elvin Evans, the final driver to cross the line, in 16th, and Jack Aitken is in 17th, obviously not completing the race but 3 laps down with that failure. Hansen in 18th with Stuvik 19th, Pagenaud 20th, Hart 21st, Van Gisbergen in 22nd, Van Thor in 23rd, Lee Watanabe in 24th, and the disqualifications of Larson and De Vries in 25th and 26th. And after what was another chaotic Grand Prix, it is back to Chris.
So Spain become the first team in Division 1 to get a victory in both the sprint and the feature this season. Congratulations to them, and there's also a well done again to Stoffel Van Dorn in second place. He's proving himself worthy once again. for Belgium and Division 1. And yeah, some interesting results there and some surprises. But alas, there's still the feature race to come. But before we do that, we do have the Division 2 feature race now. And the grid for it goes like this. Kevin Magnussen is on pole by 1,000th of a second to Roman De Angelis in second place. That is just absolutely fantastic. Will Power in third by, well, only at 900th of a second there. And then Arthur Leclerc is behind them, a bit of a way in qualifying by 2/10, but still fourth place, and he can pick up pieces should the people ahead fail for his home race. And then Felix Rosenqvist in fifth. Antonio Giovinazzi in 6th, Antonio Felix da Costa in 7th, Buemi in 8th, Leonardo Fornarelli in 9th, Nico Verone in 10th, Rafael Camara in 11th, Kevin van der Linde in 12th, Christian Lundgaard in 13th, JB Whincup in 14th, Marcus Ericsson in 15th, Pato Ward starts in 16th, but because of Rafael Macello's penalty, he starts in 17th, Robert Wickens in 18th, Stefan Rakelmi in 19th, Felipe Nasr in 20th, Sheldon van der Linde in 21st, Felipe Albuquerque in 22nd, Rafael Villagomez in 23rd. Then we have Sasha Fenestros in 24th, and both the India cars of Raghunathan and Carter Kayan at the back of the grid. And now it's back to Ryan for Division 2 feature. Take it away.
We're back again here in Monaco for the Div 2 feature race, and it is Magnussen on pole with newcomer De Angelis in second position. The lights are coming on, and once they extinguish, we're away here in Monaco. That's a bad start for De Angelis. Power gets low and well into second position. And up the hill doesn't look to be too much going on in the background. There's a little bit of shuffling going on in the background. Rosenqvist and Leclerc are going side by side, and Rosenqvist comes out ahead in that situation there. So they come through Casino Square for the first time. So Magnussen leads from Will Power in second. And it seems everyone has got away cleanly through the field. Leclerc shuffles down into fifth position as a result of Rosenqvist going up through into fourth place. So Rosenqvist again looking for a good result here today. Still Magnussen through the chicane. Trying, and that's Marcello having a little bit of a trip up with one of the Mexican cars further down the field. Marcello, who's already found himself in trouble from the previous race, he doesn't want to find himself in trouble again. Nasr has got a front wing damage, so not a good race again for Nasr. I think Nasr was also struggling in the sprint race, if memory serves me correct. But Magnussen across the line, a 1.3 second advantage already, ahead of Power. De Angelis still holding on to that third position ahead of Rosenqvist. Rosenqvist has managed to close the gap in, however, on the Canadian. And Leclerc almost getting it completely wrong at the top of Mirabeau. So Nasr has safely made it back to pit lane. He's going to have a front wing change. So Antonio Giovinazzi is in 6th position. He's on the back end of Leclerc. Here is Calvin van der Linde. So what's been going on with him? It seems he's just about holding on ahead of Nico Verone. Camara again, another one of the newcomers for this race weekend, in 12th position, ahead of Ericsson and Lundgaard. And Sheldon van der Linde currently rounds out the points in 15th. But back to Magnussen at the front, still pulling away as Rakelmi in 21st position, having a bit of a lock-up into the chicane. So looking further back, there is Marcello Villagomez bringing up the rear. And interestingly, that means Carter Kayan in 19th and Raghunathan in 23rd. So Team India not last at the moment. And that's pretty much on merit as it stands at the moment, with Nasr being the only person to have any form of issues so far in the opening lap. Still, Magnussen chipping away nearly 2 seconds is the lead to Will Power. Power solidifying what has been a good couple of races so far for Team Australia since the last upgrade window. Obviously, Australia having a bit of shaky start to this season. And there's contact there, that's Albuquerque with what looks to be, I think that's Marcello, is it? No, it's Riquelme. So home hero Riquelme in 21st having a bit of a collision with Albuquerque. Obviously at one point this season, come Silverstone, these two were fighting at the front, but how the roles have changed, and Riquelme's just gone off. Riquelme's been hit from behind by the looks of things, and he's lost his rear wheel. So that was Fenestraz behind in the slipstream coming out the tunnel, and Fenestraz looks for a move, goes up the inside, Riquelme shuts the door, and off goes the wheel. And this is one of the troubles with passing in Monaco. It requires cooperation from both parties. The door was definitely open there, but Riquelme wasn't being particularly compliant to that move. So that will be under investigation by the stewards. And I think that will be a penalty coming Fenestraz's way, most likely. Here's the recovering Felipe Nasr. There's the confirmation of a disqualification for Fenestraz. Robert Wickens down in 17th position, seem to struggle as they circle both side up Beau Rivage. And that's Pato Award going up into 17th position. Wickens seemingly struggling here in Monaco. He's had some good performances so far this season, but interestingly struggling here in Monaco, where his new teammate is happily up in the podium positions. I say that, actually no. Back at the front whilst we were gone, Rosenqvist has got through into third and he's pressuring Power for second. Rosenqvist, and there's a little bit of a train appearing behind Power now, so Rosenqvist, De Angelis and Leclerc all bunched up together. You then have Giovinazzi and Buemi not far behind this chasing pack. Magnussen has now extended his advantage to nearly 4 seconds over Will Power, so Will Power the cork in the bottle. Which potentially suggests that they're going long in their strategy. They did do this in Sachsenring last time out and it worked pretty well for them. On board with Award. And he is chasing down Wing Cup Nasr. Second the fastest lap, obviously in some lovely clean air out the back of the field. But here is Albuquerque, who is on the back end of Karthikeyan. And well, essentially, with the position where Karthikeyan is at the moment, providing he can still stay ahead of Albuquerque, if enough people ahead retire, and much like in the sprint race, you may see India scoring their first points of the season. India being the only team across both categories to have not scored a point at all so far this season. Nasr still pushing to catch up onto the back end of the field. He's still got 20 seconds to close in for Villagomez in 24th position. And another lock up there for the Brazilian, so he had a little bit of understeer through into the back, which is something you definitely don't want to experience. And a further lock-up, and his power on his own. So what's happened here? De Angelis has gone through on Rosenquist. But it looks like no real issue is there. We'll need to try and get a camera on that, as at the moment we're looking at Jamie Whincup further on down the field in 16th, who is under pressure. Oh, there's a big backup of cars going through the chicane. So what's happened here? The power well and truly on his own now. He's got nearly 5 seconds ahead of De Angelis. So whatever happened, it's a move that's Rosenquist's pulled. Rosenquist has got some sort of issue because Rosenquist has gone down to 6th now. It is his fellow countryman of Marcus Ericsson. In 12th position, he's chasing down camera, but you can see this big long train of cars ahead. And this pretty much, that train, as we look through the cars to come back through, but it doesn't quite happen. From what I could see, that was Leclerc all the way down to Verone and Lundgaard. So 4th position, all in one big long train, all the way down to 15th as it stands. So a lot of chopping and changing potentially going to happen. Magnussen, however, is quite happy, although he's lost a bit of time to power on this lap. Magnussen did have the gap out to a little over 5 seconds earlier, and Power's managed to bring some of that time back, so I'm assuming Magnussen's made a mistake somewhere, because he's now pushing back on and just opening that gap out a little bit more now. You see De Angelis in 3rd in the background there, as he comes through at Sandoval, but Magnussen quite a way ahead. In a controlling lead. I think the drivers ahead are going to have to hope that he's running a little bit light in this early phase, and that this isn't his true pace on heavy fuel. Here's Roman De Angelis, the current factory Aston Martin driver in the World Endurance Hypercar class, and he's had a great debut so far in terms of his on-track performance. If you look further on back again to Felipe Albuquerque in 20th position, he's still not managed to find a way past Narain Karthikeyan, and it's pretty much a similar story as what we saw out in Sachsenring last time out. Although the Indian car, or the Team India cars, have been generally the slowest cars on the grid. Oh, and Giovinazzi goes into the barriers. So Antonio Giovinazzi goes into the barriers at Anthony Nodes, but just about managed to get away with it. That put Buemi under pressure from Da Costa for a moment then, but Da Costa unable to find a way through on the Swiss driver. No damage there for the Italian driver, but that's definitely been a bit of a wake-up call for him. And meanwhile, O'Ward has come to a slow. He's lost his front wing as well. So what has happened here? The car's just died, and he clatters in the barriers for good measure. So O'Ward out of the race. It's a suspension failure. Oh, and what has happened at Rosenquist? This is, well, roadblock down at the bottom of the hairpin, and he's just gone straight on, and it looks like a car failure, potentially. And that has caused a massive roadblock. Car's pretty much climbing over the back of the Swedish driver, And this is terrible. I've not seen anything like it. And he's having to reverse all the way down, and he's been hit by Ericsson. So if he wasn't already out of the race, Buemi complaining of reversing on the track being so dangerous, but at the end of the day, Rosenqvist had to try and do something to get out of the way, as he had pretty much blocked the entire circuit. There are no safety cars or red flags in this championship. So Rosenqvist out of the race. He's been handed a disqualification, which I personally feel is quite harsh, as Fenestraz now goes into the back of Albuquerque. So Fenestraz, who has already taken one driver out of this race today, had another attempt at doing the exact same thing to Albuquerque. So Albuquerque's filing down to the back end of the field. Now, what this incident has caused, as a result of the mass pile-up down at the hairpin, is a massive gap between the front of the field and the rest of the field. So more penalty points added to his licence. Will Power with a big lock-up into Mirabel in his attempts to catch Magnussen. But as you look further back, you can see the gaps there. De Angelis, Leclerc, and then afterwards it goes from 12 seconds to 31 seconds to Da Costa. So essentially, if any of the first couple of front runners were to pit, they'd most likely come out in clean air. It is Da Costa in 5th position. The chances of him managing to catch up to the cars ahead are looking very slim, so 5th is most likely the best result he's going to manage, providing no one ahead comes into any technical issues. Oh, and that's Ragunathan off. Ragunathan off at Portier, but he's managed to get the car going again. But I think, actually, what that has done, the one person it's been good for, is Felipe Nasser, who had himself a 20-second gap to catch up to the rest of the field. I think that's pretty much allowed him onto the back of the field. Marcello's in pit lane now, after 10 laps. But here is De Angelis holding on to that 3rd position ahead of Leclerc. And that's Arthur Leclerc to save any confusion. Power still struggling with the pace for Magnussen. Magnussen's managed to have a bit of a regroup after whatever it was that caused him to lose some pace and some time to Power. He's now pushed the gap out to 8.1 seconds. And Power is also fairly comfortable ahead of De Angelis. De Angelis not so comfortably ahead of Leclerc though. De Angelis being told that there's good potential for undercut or holding position if they were to pit, as what I alluded to earlier, there is quite a considerable gap between himself and the field behind it, though I'm not sure if the gap is big enough to come out in free air at the moment for De Angelis. Ragunathan now pits from the rear end of the field. Here is Christian Lundgaard, who's fairly on his own. He's got Well, he's got Camera a couple of seconds ahead and Verone is a few seconds behind him. The two Van der Lindes are also together in 13th and 14th, and Jamie Whincup currently in the final points paying position. Here's Felipe Nasser, so he has caught up to the back of the field, and it looks like he's made up one position already. He's gone through on Felipe Albuquerque, obviously Albuquerque having to rejoin after being spun round earlier at the chicane. So what was looking like a fairly tough day at the office for the Brazilian has been made a little bit easier, but he still has to pass people to make up positions for points. Here is Fornarelli ahead of Ericsson and Boemi. Leclerc having a little bit of a wide moment going through the hairpin there, but nothing like what Rosenqvist had, but he's still hanging on to the back end of De Angelis. He's being told that he's got a 19-second advantage to Da Costa. But I think for the strategy to work best, they're potentially going to want to wait for the likes of Da Costa and Fornarelli and Ericsson to pit, which will give them a little bit more of a buffer, so they will have more chance of coming out in clean air. Back to Power in second position. And there's Magnussen having a little bit of an issue going into Mirabeau. Sorry, Massenet that is. It's one of the M's. This is Mirabeau now. But don't want too much more of that from Magnussen. He's got a fairly comfortable advantage of 9.6 seconds to Power. Now Power ran by, or Team Australia, owned by Ed Hunter, and from my understanding Ed Hunter is yet to have a race win in any form of the RML Championships, as Carthagena has a bit of a lock-up. So at the moment it's looking like a tall order for the Australian driver, but he's going to be hoping that Magnussen comes into some difficulties, because if that is the case, Power will be on course for Ed Hunter's first win in an RML race. This is De Angelis. We cut back to the other Team Australia car of Jamie Whincup, who is securing at the moment the final points paying position. He is ahead of Robert Wickens. A bit of a lock up there through the chicane. He's now allowed Wickens all over the back of him. He's lost the toe from the Sheldon Linden brothers ahead, or the Van der Linde brothers. And Magnussen having more difficulties, so it looks like he's pushed quite hard on those tyres and he's suffering with a bit of understeer. That's another moment there going through the hairpin. Still, the gap at the moment, almost 10 seconds, but we'll see through the next timing intermediate whether or not he has lost any time. Magnussen has gone through into the next sector. Here comes Power. He's lost a little bit of time, but not too much. It's still 9.4 seconds. And Power has 4 seconds, or just over 4 seconds, to De Angelis, who is under pressure as Magnussen goes into the barriers. Magnussen into the wall at Anthony Nogues, and he's just past pit entry. He's lost his front wing. And what was a commanding lead of nearly 10 seconds to Power. I said he was pushing hard, and he once again suffers with understeer from pushing too hard and hits the barrier, and Power is all over the back of him now. Up the inside he comes into Casino Square, and they're still side by side as they come down into Mirabeau, and Power takes the lead. Ericsson, in the meantime, is also pitting. Van der Linde is pitting as well. But more drama here in Monaco. Roman De Angelis now makes his way past Magnussen. Leclerc will also do the same, and has done so. So Power, De Angelis and Leclerc is now your top three. He's got quite a buffer now between himself and Da Costa. But Da Costa's now saying he's got a suspension issue. So Da Costa is slowing. That's going to give, and that's camera going show. So Leclerc pits from third position. It's all kicking off all at once here. Here's Kavaney. He's probably the least likely person I want to be watching right now because there's so much going on at the moment. Magnussen has made it back to pit lane. Da Costa is now out of the race with his suspension failure. That's promoted Fornarelli, and Magnussen's yet to come out of pit lane. Buemi's just going through now but hasn't made it past, and a lot of shuffling going on. Fornarelli through, Giovinazzi into 5th. Magnussen's came out of the pit lane, and Buemi's lost out 2 positions as a result of whatever's gone on there. So here is Arthur Leclerc, who pitted and has still come out in 3rd position. And that's Raffaele Marcello going slow. So another car has expired by the looks of things. Potentially a transmission failure. I didn't see anything hanging off the car. Yes, it is a transmission failure for the Swiss driver. Giovinazzi under pressure there from Magnussen. So Magnussen driving angry after his mistake. Was luckily not to have that front wing locked off just again. And Giovinazzi looks as though he's coming to pit as well as Fornarelli, so that's going to promote Magnussen up into 4th position, but he's now lost out time to Leclerc. Leclerc is in the best position at the moment because he wasn't too far off the back end of Power and De Angelis, and he's potentially going to perform the undercut if he puts in some good lap times now. Groenewegen having a handful of understeer through the swimming pool section, and that's not a place, well, you don't want to have understeer anywhere on this circuit, but that's definitely not a place you want to experience it through one of the highest speed sections of the circuit. Here's Power out in front. Now the team are probably going to want to ask him to come into pit sometime soon because they are under threat here from Leclerc, who is now 23 seconds off the lead. So it looks like it's going to be Leclerc taking the lead here at his home Grand Prix. They come to cross the line again. And the camera, after whatever issues he had, has now come back out in 20th position behind Felipe Albuquerque. Buemi pits from 5th position. Whincup also in pit lane as well, so flurry of activity in pit lane. Nasser also up into pit lane. And from what was going to be a potential disaster of a weekend for Nasser, or feature race, it's now looking like there is potential for points as Fornarelli misses a gear up into the Casino Square. And slows down big time for good measure. So here is Leclerc. He's managed to close into 21 seconds, or just shy of 22 seconds. He's now being told there is potential of jumping Power. Power is extending his advantage to De Angelis, but the team really need to be telling Power to be getting into pit lane right now. So across the line again, the gap comes down just a little bit more. Now obviously, when Power does eventually pit, he will have fresher tyres than Leclerc, but obviously this is Monaco and track position is king. Here is Roman De Angelis in that second position. As it stands, he may struggle to come out ahead of Magnussen. He's either going to come out just behind Magnussen or slot in just in front, but it's going to be very close. Power being told to pit and being told it will be close between himself and Leclerc. And into the pit comes Will Power, and so does De Angelis. So the two leaders pit at the same time. Here is Leclerc. So he rounds Larascas through into Anthony Nogues. Where is he going to slot in comparisons for two ahead? And he comes in just behind Power. He goes around the outside of Power. Arthur Leclerc takes the lead here in Monaco. Just ahead of Power. And I feel like the team definitely left it a lap too late for the Australian driver, but obviously he will have fresher tyres towards the end of this race. He is close enough that he is definitely within striking distance of the Monegasque driver. Power is just going to have to bide his time, hope that Leclerc makes a mistake. We've already had one leader do it so far, and here he is, Magnussen, in 4th position, who's chasing down De Angelis. De Angelis fresh out of pit lane on some fresh tyres. And I would suspect that once he's got his tyres up to temperature, De Angelis will be fairly comfortable in that 3rd position. Leclerc with a lock-up on the exit of the swimming pool section. That's going to give a sniff of blood to Will Power in 2nd. I feel like this battle is potentially going to rage on for the rest of the race, but it definitely seems like Leclerc has got a bit of a pace advantage at the moment over Power. Whether or not the tyre offset will come into play towards the end of this race as Verone and Kelvin van der Linde pit from 5th and 6th position. That promotes Villagomez into 6th, and I think he's yet to stop as well. Lundgaard is up to 5th. Here's Raffaele Camara on the back end of Albuquerque, and Albuquerque's actually on the back end of Nasser. Nasser up into 17th position, so only 2 places away from scoring a point. It's not worked out so far well for Buemi, the driver who was circulating in the top 5 earlier, but as a result of Rosenqvist's incident, a lot of drivers that were in contention for a podium in this race have lost out on that opportunity, but that has helped massively with these drivers up the front, and it has allowed us to have this potential barnstorming battle between Leclerc and Power, and Leclerc's gone off into the barriers. Leclerc, again, the same as Magnussen, goes off into the wall at Anthony Nose. I'm not sure if he actually managed to make contact with the barriers there. There's no lasting damage, but that's allowed power into the lead. And he is rocketing away from the Monegasque driver. Lundgaard pits from 5th position in the meantime, but at the same time, De Angelis is not far away. So how is he circulating at the moment? He is within under 3 seconds. Nearly 2 seconds away from the back end of Leclerc. Here's Buemi on the back end of Sheldon van der Linde in 7th position. And this is the scrap for 5th position, as you have Ericsson and Fornarelli just ahead. There's Calvin van der Linde getting it all wrong into Massenet. A lot of drivers struggling there, seeming to miss a gear by the looks of things. Here is on board with Will Power, who is already over a second away from Leclerc. We'll see. Actually, Leclerc's responded in the final sector. He's managed to close into 0.7 a second of Power. We still have a race going on here. De Angelis, in the meantime, has closed in half a second on Power. So I think Power has made a mistake. But here's De Angelis all over the back end of Leclerc. But we cut away now to Calvin van der Linde, who's having difficulty once more through the swimming pool section. He's got Fenestras all over the back end of him, but actually, if memory serves me correct, he's got a few penalties over his head. But what's happened in this Grand Prix so far, so much has gone on, it's hard to keep track of it. Magnussen's not really out of this, as you can see him just rounding the hairpin as the rest go through to Portier. So Leclerc now under pressure from Roman De Angelis. And this is actually costing Leclerc quite a lot of time, as he was 0.7 away from Power. It's now 2.7. Has the pressure got to the local driver of Leclerc when the team thought they had done a masterstroke in the strategy area? Leclerc goes and throws it away and has gone from leading the Grand Prix to second. He's now under pressure for 3rd position at the moment. And if he continues to circulate at this sort of pace, Magnussen's not that much further behind. De Angelis being told that he's struggling with his tyres. There's not a massive tyre offset between them, but still noticeable enough. Here is Power still holding on to that lead. 2.7 seconds is the advantage to Leclerc, and that's Carthagena going into the wall at the swimming pool section. How on earth has he not taken a wheel off there? Because that was a considerable collision with the barriers. Out front, Power gradually eking out his advantage. It's now up to 2.8, so he's taking a 10th here and there. He's just got to keep it clean. Lockups further on back. That's how Leclerc once again in 17th position, being chased down by the Mexican car of Villagomez. But back up at the front. And Power still streaking away from Leclerc. And Leclerc has put a little bit of daylight between himself and De Angelis. De Angelis potentially having a bit of a breather on his attack. Meanwhile, towards the back, you've got Robert Wickens in 10th position, under pressure from Lundgaard, who's recently pitted in the last few laps. Here is De Angelis still shadowing Leclerc for that second position. Still under a second between the pair of them. And that's Fenestraz locking up into Massenet. Whincup in 13th. And he has Kelvin van der Linde ahead. Here's Fornarelli, someone who we haven't spoken about in a while. He's in 6th position, holding on ahead of Sheldon van der Linde. Lundgaard, is that Verone that's going back? No, it's Wickens. So Wickens has gone off in the chicane. Was he helped or was it done by himself? He was definitely helped there. So that looks like Lundgaard has gone for a lunge. Here we are on board with Lundgaard. He goes for the lunge up the inside of Wickens, and very much like we saw earlier, Wickens closes the door on Lundgaard and finds himself being pushed out the way. And what was looking like a top 10 finish for the Canadian is looking like he's not going to be scoring points at all at this rate. And he does a fairly scruffy way of trying to get back onto the circuit. He's now bumped into the barriers. Lundgaard has been given a 10-second penalty as a result of that. But here is back at the front to De Angelis. Ragunathan hits into the barriers, the same as Carthagena, but this time it has front wing damage. So he's going to have to make his way back to pit lane. There is Wickens behind him, so he's finally managed to recover the car. That was beginning to be quite painful for the Canadian driver. But further on up the field, his Whincup still holding on to that 12th position. And it just seems like that Australian car is quick enough to keep himself safe from any attack from the cars behind. Here's Power still in the lead. The gap's not really changing that much between himself and Leclerc behind. Leclerc still holding on ahead of De Angelis. It's now a second between the pair of them, so either De Angelis still taking a bit of a breather and is going to go for another attack, or he's used the best of his tyre life. But it's not over yet between the two. I think there could still be some fireworks between the pair of them come the end of this race. Camera getting it all wrong and all crossed up coming into Rascasse. So here is Roman De Angelis still trying to hang on to the back of Leclerc, but I feel like he's made a mistake somewhere, as he's lost even more time to the Monegasque driver, although he's not lost too much time. All he really needs is Leclerc to make another mistake like he's already done, and he's either going to be passed or right on his gearbox again, but he's going to want to make it job done soon, because Magnussen still isn't too far off the back end of these two. And obviously, as a result of Rosenqvist's incident earlier in the race, you can still see a considerable gap between 4th and 5th position. But back at the front, Will Power, gap still staying the same. It's not really budging. If anything, Leclerc may be starting to pull a few temps here and there. Back on Will Power, we'll see as we go through another timing sector. I think the next one is coming up sometime soon, and Nico Verone getting it all wrong into Massenet. Barone, who has almost got wing cup for close company. Still that gap ebbing and flowing between both first, second and third. And Leclerc is closing slightly on power now. He's taken 2/10 out of power this lap. And De Angelis trying to close in on Leclerc with the gap at 1.2 seconds. Is Power starting to struggle as Magnussen has a bit of a lock-up into the hairpin. But is Power starting to struggle now in these latter stages with 10 laps left to go of this Monaco Div 2 feature race. I can hear Ed Hunter's foot tapping from here at the moment as he gets closer and closer to his debut win in the championship and the RML. Here is Calvin van der Linde ahead of Fenestraz. 13th position for the South African. And that gap still coming down, another 10th taken out of the lead. But is Leclerc going to run out of laps here at home in Monaco? Not managed to get rid of De Angelis just yet. He has managed to pull a 10th out on De Angelis, but still managing to just about hang on is the Canadian driver. And that's Sheldon van der Linde having a massive lock-up into Mirabeau, just ahead of Sebastian Buemi. Leclerc still closing on power. The gap now down to 2.4 seconds. He's not quite closing in at the rate that he would quite want, but all he can do is hope that Power makes some form of error. Back at the front, and it is still, and there's an error there from Power, and that's quite a big one there. Massive lock up, and then he also lit up the tyres trying to get away from Portier. Now what has that done for the gap behind? Leclerc definitely smells blood now. As they come across the timing segment, it's now down to 1.5 seconds. 1.5 seconds is the gap here in Monaco between Will Power and Arthur Leclerc, with De Angelis not far behind these two. And that has definitely affected some of the tyre performance for Power. It looks visible that he's struggling. What's the gap across the line now? And it's pretty much stayed the same in that final sector, and that's an off there from van der Linde. So Sheldon van der Linde has gone off, and he's actually held up Buemi in the process. Now what has happened here is it been an off into to back. He's going through under Sis and off into the barrier there. Now was that down to a failure, or was that just driver error? From that angle I can't quite see if there's a wheel missing there, and I think it is a wheel missing because it's been judged as an accident. Here is Lundgaard in 9th position. However, he does have a 10-second penalty over his head, obviously, from the incident earlier. Still, Will Power ahead, just about managing. The lead to Leclerc is now 1.4 seconds, but Power cannot afford any more mistakes. The top three covered by 2.8 seconds. Here as we go on board with De Angelis, here's Lundgaard getting it all wrong. Coming out of the hairpin there, and that's allowed Verone onto the back of him, but again, Verone, I can't quite remember if he's another one of the drivers that's got a penalty over his head. We'll have to wait until we get the final classifications. And those of you at home has probably got better memories than myself. Here is Leclerc. He's managed to take another 10th out of Power. 1.3 seconds is the gap. With 5 laps remaining. Just needs to get within that sweet 1 second and he'll definitely be receiving a slipstream off of Power. But he won't be getting if he carries on like that, and that's a lockup that's allowed De Angelis right onto the back of him once again. That's put the gap out to 2.1 seconds, so Power can breathe a little bit easier. But he's still got to be laser focused as he rounds the final 4 laps of this Monaco circuit. Oh, and that's a very close moment there. Fenestraz almost taking out Kelvin van der Linde this time round. And Ericsson into the wall. Ericsson in 5th position hits the wall. It's Anthony Nodes, but just about holds on. He's actually got a fairly decent advantage ahead of Fornarelli behind, so he holds on to that 5th position. No damage there. And Albuquerque goes into the barriers as well and is collected by what I believe that was that O'Ward there? It's one of the Team Mexico cars. And behind them is Camera, as Nasser has found himself in points paying position of 14th. So that's 2 points going the way of Nasser after what was going to be a potentially disastrous result for the Brazilian. Here's Verone in 10th position, having a few issues there. Wing Cup just behind. Here's Robert Wickens having some difficulty through the hairpin. 20 cars still circulating of the 26 starters. But still, Wickens, after his instances earlier, has still found himself ahead of the 2 Team India cars. But back at the front, Leclerc trying to pull that gap down. But after that mistake into the chicane has pretty much cost him for now, the chance of victory, unless Power has any form of difficulties himself. He's not too far behind this man, Ragunathan, but I'm not sure if he's fast enough to catch him before the end of this race. But here is Power, and back to Kelvin van der Linde, who is still holding on to 12th position ahead of Fenestraz and Naza. And Fenestraz almost nerfing van der Linde off there. He's already in trouble at the moment. And that's Fornarelli into the barriers. So Fornarelli, who was chasing down Ericsson, repeats what Ericsson did a few laps prior and goes into the wall at anti-Nogues. And that looked like, I think we just cut to Will Power, who just had another small mistake, and that's allowed Leclerc within 1.6 seconds. And actually, we may see as we come across another timing marker soon whether that gap has changed. It still stayed at 1.6 seconds. There's a second between Leclerc and De Angelis. And Fornarelli still making a meal and just about staying out the wall. The team telling him that he's doing well and needs the points. He needs to stay nice and clean. He's got a pretty good buffer ahead of Buemi, although if he carries on the way he's going, you can see Buemi just in the background. Up the hill they go. Still 1.6 seconds is the lead between Power and Leclerc, and Leclerc's managed to pull out a little bit of an advantage to De Angelis now. 1.3 seconds. Well, it's now gone down to 1.1 seconds now, so De Angelis hasn't given up on this yet, and neither has Leclerc, but the laps are counting down and the laps are running out as they are on the second to last lap now. Power with a lock-up into the chicane. So Will Power locks up into the chicane. They'll go through the timing marker, but it looks like Leclerc has made a mistake himself because the gap is still 1.9 seconds, or it was 1.6, it's now been pushed out to 1.9. And it just seems like the pressure is getting to Leclerc here. Power has given him a few opportunities, but he's not been able to capitalise on it, and he's made a few mistakes himself. De Angelis all over the back end of Leclerc as well. So a moment ago, the gap, and that is Whincup trying to get through, is that on Verone. Here is De Angelis as they are on the final lap. And he is right up with Leclerc, so definitely within shooting distance. As Verone carries on to make a few lockups in that 10th position. He's now got a train of cars behind him. But that's not what we want to be looking at right now. We want to be looking at Leclerc versus De Angelis. Here is Will Power into the chicane for one last time. Another little lock up there by the Australian driver, but he holds on, and it looks like Leclerc has also managed to hold on to second position ahead of De Angelis. No real overtaking opportunities from now on. The only thing is if one of these drivers makes a mistake in these final few corners. The swimming pool section is now completed. He's through into Rascasse. And out of Rascasse, all he has now is Anthony Nogues. And he's round that brilliantly there Will Power comes across the line to win here in Monaco. A first win for Australia in the Nations Cup and a first win for Ed Hunter in the RML. So he is going to be ecstatic with that. Leclerc manages to hold on to second position ahead of De Angelis in third. Another cracking result here for the new driver for Canada. Magnussen, although he tried hard enough to not finish this race, manages to finish in fourth position, and Ericsson just crosses the line here in fifth. Here's Fornarelli, who, with a few mistakes, nearly opened the door for Buemi, but Buemi running out of laps there. Giovinazzi and Lundgaard. Lundgaard with the 10-second penalty over him, so we'll have to see where he shuffles down the order. The rest of them come streaming through. Albuquerque, the last person in the top 15 across the road. All back with the cars crossing the line. Here's Wickens across the line, and here's the two Team India cars still at the back of the field. Again, yet to score a single point in this championship. I think this weekend was probably their best opportunity to do so. And there's a car stopped on the circuit there, so I think that was actually De Angelis. But here is the official classification. Will Power is your race winner with Arthur Leclerc in second and Roman De Angelis in third. Kevin Magnussen goes fourth with Ericsson in fifth, Fornarelli in sixth, Buemi seventh, Giovinazzi in 8th and Verone in 9th. Whincup is promoted into 10th position with Van der Linde 11th, Nasser in 12th, recovering from the back of the field, and Lundgaard with that penalty is pushed down to 13th. In 14th is Felipe Albuquerque with Villagomez in 15th, rounding out the points. Camara in 16th, Wickens in 17th, and Carthagena in 18th, with Regunafin at 19th and the last person across the road. In 20th position was Van der Linde with Marcello, also a suspension failure. Da Costa also went out with Award, Riquelme, Fenestraz, and obviously the disqualification for Rosenquist, which was also the retirement disqualification as well for Fenestraz. And after what was a very, very dramatic and hectic feature race in Division 2, it is back over to Chris.
Well, what I can say is certainly well done Ed Hunter and well done Australia for a fantastic victory, and commiserations to Arthur Leclerc. I mean, throwing away a win like that on his home turf, but he could be happy that he's at least on the podium. And yeah, pretty epic result for a lot of teams and some interesting ones for sure. But yeah, now that is done, we can see all of that means for the standings now. And we can see that Pato Award now leads by just 3 points to Felix Rosenquist in second place. Kevin Magnussen now, after some interesting results with difficulties today, going on to fourth, but he's in third place now with 65 points. Will Power is now on 64 after the victory. Sebastian Buemi on 62. Jimmy Whincup on 61, so it's all very, very close there. Robert Wickens for Canada, 57 points. Arthur Leclerc, because of that P2, now puts him in 8th with 55 points. Antonio Felix da Costa on 51 points. Felipe Nasr on 43. Felipe Albuquerque on 42. Raffaele Marcello on 41. Marcus Ericsson on 39 points. Then Sasha Fenestraz on 38 points. Stefan Riquelme on 38 points. Leonardo Fornaroli on 36. Christian Lundgaard on 35. Kelvin van der Linde on 30. Roman De Angelis on 22 after his debut, which is pretty good going. Good haul of points for the first race. James Hinchcliffe on 80 points. Nico Veroni on 16 points. Sheldon van der Linde on 12. Bruno Senna with 9 points. Antonio Giovinazzi with 8. Antonio Fuoco now in the standings with 8 after that race ban. That'll be lifted now. Rafael Camara on 7 points, and then we also see that Rafael Villagomez actually gets points now with 1 contributing for Mexico, and both the India cars both on 0. And then what does that mean for the nation standings? Australia now take the lead for Division 2 nation standings, and Sweden only 9 behind on 116 points, Switzerland with 103, Denmark now with 100, Canada 97, Monaco 93, Portugal also on 93, Mexico with 81, Brazil 59, Argentina 54, Italy 52, South Africa 42, and India with 0. Before we continue with the next segment, we have to mention that Stasio Fenestras, after accumulating 9 points in that one race alone today, he is now banned for the next race. So his substitute, Fakir Regalia, will be stepping in at the next event. But now we can look at the Division 1 feature grid, and we can see that New Zealand have locked out the front row. Scott Dixon starting on pole with Shane van Gisbergen in second place. Sandy Stuvik good at his qualifying in third place. Simon Pagenaud in fourth. We have Robin Fryans in fifth, very good qualifying for him. And we also have René Rast in sixth, Daniel Yokoda in seventh, Kabumi Kobayashi in eighth, Stoffel Vandal in ninth, Alex Palou, the sprint winner, in 10th, Naoki Yamamoto in 11th, Alex Dunn in 12th, Max Hart in 13th, Mick Schumacher in 14th, Philip Hansen, the championship leader, struggling there in 15th. And then we've got Joseph Newgarden in 16th, Carl Larsen 17th, Alfred Evans in 18th, Sebastian Bourdais 19th, De Resta 20th, De Vries 21st, Jack Aiken 22nd, Collado 23rd, Natalie Liwatelavaragal in 24th, and then we have Dries Van Doorn 25th and Anna Lloyd in 26th. And now for the final race of the day, Ryan, back to you.
Here for the final race of the day, it's the Division 1 feature race, and it is both Dixon and Van Gisbergen on the front row. Here come the lights, and out they go, and away, obviously, well, by both the New Zealand drivers. Van Gisbergen gets the jump over Dixon and goes round the outside into Sander Vogt. Stuvik struggling to hold on to that third position, and Pagenaud's gone up into third position. But they're still side by side, and Stuvik's gone round the outside of Pagenaud. So Stuvik holding on there with the two New Zealand cars just up ahead. So they come down to the hairpin for the first time. It's all been fairly clean so far. Apart from Bourdais with a rear wheel missing. So as I say that, let's see what happened here. So Bourdais, and he's hit by one of the Belgian drivers, and that is Dries Van Thor by the looks of things. Indeed it is, back in last position. So he goes down the inside. I don't quite know what happened there. It looked as though he was going up the inside of De Resta there, and in turn one of the Team Wales cars popped out in front of him. He just had nowhere to go, and really panicked and went into the back of Bourdais. So Bourdais out of the race already on lap 1. Van Gisbergen given words of encouragement. It seems like the plan is all coming together at the moment, and it is a disqualification for Dries Van Thor, as we probably expected. Now, so as we look to Robin Fryns in 5th position, ahead of René Rast, and Stuvik just further up in 3rd position. It seems as though the Netherlands cars not being as competitive as we thought they would be, and some drivers that we've probably not heard of being far more competitive, or a lot more surprising than we would have expected. Sandy Stuvik there in 3rd, having won the Euro Formula Open Championship ahead of a certain Alex Palou in early years, so he's got a fairly good resume, although a lot of people probably have not heard of the driver. And that's going slow there, that's Robin Fryns. So has Fryns got an issue here? He seems to be holding ahead of Yokoda. So unless he made a mistake into Portier, which allowed René Rast to have the run on him through the tunnel, he appears to be going all okay for the moment. But up at the front it is Van Gisbergen, who leads by over a second to teammate Dixon. Another fastest lap of the race by Shane van Gisbergen. And Van Thor's out of the race now. So Dries Van Thor after... Oh! And looks as though he's hit the barriers on the entrance to the swimming pool section, and then is hit by De Resta. But it looks like by that point he's possibly already lost his rear wheel there. We'll have to see another camera angle, see if there's anything a bit closer. But a retirement for Van Thor. He was already disqualified. There's Pagenaud going to gear too many down into Massenet. But it actually looks like Dixon's trying to close up onto Van Gisbergen now. Van Gisbergen trying to stretch the field, but Dixon going with him. And they are running 3 seconds, nearly 4 seconds. That's Max Hart getting it completely wrong into Portier there. Here's Philip Hansen, who's shaping up Carl Larson. Not quite close enough for the move into the chicane. Now back at the front, and the gap still staying relatively the same. Although it looks as though it's possibly extended a little bit there, but no, it's still the same across the line. 1.1 seconds between the two Kiwis. Joseph Newgarden further back down the field in a position where he's not used to being. He's behind Elvin Evans. Still at the front, these two extending on the drivers behind. There's James Collado struggling for traction through the Casino Square. He's chasing down Lee Watanabe. Collado, who I think has lost a little bit of confidence, potentially as a result of the incidents he's been involved in and the penalty points he's received due to not being the cleanest of drivers. He seems to have dialed things back, and Newgarden getting all out of shape through the chicane. But luckily, being as this is Monaco and you generally get a bit of a train of cars, as you can see here with Ella Lloyd having difficulty through Le Rascasse, it doesn't take too much effort to catch up onto the back of the pack again. So Lloyd trying to catch up onto the back end of Hart. Hart, who's not seen any ill effects of the brush with the barriers from a couple of laps ago. This is Stoffel Van Dorn in 9th position, chasing down Kamui Kobayashi. And he has got Alex Palou a couple of seconds behind himself. But it looks like Van Gisbergen now starting to stretch the gap now between himself and Dixon. And that's Palou having a look there. Hansen also having a lock up as well. So, Palou actually being overtaken by Alex Dunn there into the chicane. So Dunn promotes himself up into 10th position ahead of the Spaniard. But still at the front. Won't say commanding lead, it is now down to 1.4 seconds between himself and Dixon, but they have got a fairly hefty advantage ahead of Stuvik in 3rd. Say round the hairpin one more time, one of the tightest corners on the calendar. Here's Pagenaud struggling to find a gear as he's stuck up behind Stuvik this time round. Pagenaud telling the team that he wants to pit late. And more mistakes going on there into the chicane. Further on back we have Lee Watanabe. We have side-by-side action with Evans and Newgarden. Newgarden goes up into 22nd position ahead of Evans through the tunnel section there. That's a move you don't tend to see that often, so I'm assuming Evans must have made some sort of mistake. It is Stuvik all alone now. So what's happened there is Pagenaud's on fire. That's what's happened there. So Simon Pagenaud, who was looking to have a good result here today, and he's carrying on rolling into the circuit there. It was quite lucky as it wasn't collected by anyone else there. But that has given Stuvik plenty of breathing room in third position. That has also promoted Rast and Freins into 4th and 5th position. But looking back, this is Kobayashi with Van Dorn just behind in the Team Belgium car. Dixon is thinking of the undercut. The team are telling Van Gisbergen. And I think Van Gisbergen wouldn't be particularly happy about that. He would like to think that the team would give him first choice, being as he is the lead car. And Freins locking up into the Rascast. That's allowed Junkadea onto the back of him. And also Kobayashi. Van Dorn's dropped a little bit off the back of Kobayashi now, so he's going to have Alex Dunn for company, who's within a second of the Belgian driver. Back at the front, and Van Gisbergen has opened that gap out to 2.2 seconds ahead of Dixon. And Dixon has 4.4 second advantage over Stuvik. So as it stands at the moment, unless Dixon is just biding his time and looking after his tyres, it's going to have to be an undercut as Yamamoto gets it all wrong on the exit of the hairpin, and that's allowed Larson onto the back end of him, but Larson's also got Hansen all over the back of himself as well. Hansen looking as though he was going to square his way up for a move down the inside, but thought better of it. As we saw in the Division 2 race, you've got to be 100% committed to making that move into the chicane, and you've got to be pretty much alongside going into the corner. We saw a few retirements and a few spins as a result of some half-hearted moves into the chicane earlier. But back at the front, Dixon still keeping it at 2.2 seconds to Van Gisbergen, and they're still extending to Stuvik behind. This is starting to look like a very good race for Team New Zealand, but it's quite early in the day. 8 laps already completed so far of the 39. As Lee Watanabe has a lock-up into Mirabeau. But still hangs on to that 19th position. And Hart is without a gearbox, so yet another gearbox failure potentially. Potentially as a result of that collision with the barriers earlier. The problem has probably manifested itself, and Stuvik's out as well. So, whilst Hart was retiring, Sandy Stuvik has retired from 3rd position with a suspension failure. And Stoffel van Doorn's retired as well. They're dropping like flies here in Monaco on lap 9. And it's another transmission failure, so both Belgian cars out of the race. Stuvik is... Well, I saw something come up there saying that Stuvik's having an issue, but I can see Stuvik still circulating. Yes, again, lost quite a bit of time to Dixon. So Shane van Gisbergen leads by 2.2 seconds to Scott Dixon. Stuvik still in 3rd position, so no failures there. Back further down the order. At the moment, Lloyd for Wales is in the final points paying position in 15th position. There's a lock-up just ahead, and I got a feeling that was Alex Palou actually, who is coming under pressure from Mick Schumacher, who is standing in for Andre Lotterer, who's been quite a naughty boy in the last few races and has accumulated too many penalty points, so he has had the race ban, and that's allowed Mick Schumacher into the car for Team Germany. It's a slight lock up there from Rast, and it looks like Rast is actually closed in big time on Stuvik. Stuvik had a fairly comfortable advantage to Pagenaud before he retired, so unless there was an incident somewhere. Here's Dixon, who's staying solidly ahead. But still managing to stay within 2 seconds actually, so it's been yo-yoing a bit between Van Gisbergen and Dixon. It's now down to 2 seconds. It was 2.2 earlier, as we've completed 11 laps so far, so not too long, and we'll expect to see some of the drivers coming into pit lane for the early stops. But Stuvik starting to drop away into the clutches of René Rast. And Van Gisbergen is still losing time to Dixon. Dixon's now come down to 1.9 seconds. And that's a spin there for Youngadair. So Danny Youngadair, who was trying to pressure Robin Freins for 5th position, has now spun it on the entry of the chicane. He's going to be stuck there for the rest of the field coming through now. There's the rest of the last car across, and he's going to Austin Powers it pretty much out of that chicane. Oh, and that's Newgarden off into the barriers. So Joseph Newgarden going a little bit wide on entry, clips the barriers, and it's put him off into the opposite wall. But luckily for him, somehow he's got away with it for the time being. He's now got Evans all over the back of him. Moto now having a bit of a lock-up as he sits happily in 10th position for the moment. He's got a little bit of a gap to himself and Larson behind, and he's got Mick Schumacher just ahead. So this is essentially turned into the battle for 8th position, with Palou at the head of this group. There's side-by-side action again. That looked like Evans and De Resta for a moment there. And side-by-side, and it looks like De Resta's actually lost out there. Actually, no. It's actually Jack Aitken. And in the meantime, still Dixon closing in on Van Gisbergen. So it definitely seemed like Dixon was having a little bit of a breather, allowing those tyre temperatures to come back down a bit. The pressure's also coming down, and he's going for another attack on his teammates and fellow countrymen. But further on back, Stuvik 9.4 seconds off the lead now, and he's got Rast for company, who's just over a second. 1.4 seconds between himself and Rast behind. Oh, there's another little attempt at an overtake just up ahead. That's Hansen on the back of Larson for 11th position. Hansen thinking that he had the drive out of into the tunnel and went through into the tunnel, but not quite side by side like we've seen some of the drivers manage. Here is Dixon. Lost a couple attempts this time round to Van Gisbergen, but still within 1.6 seconds as they come through the tunnel once again. And that's Elvin Evans nearly into the wall at the Rascasse. Sorry, Sam DeVot that was. Doesn't want to be doing any more of that, and that's lost him quite a bit of ground onto the back end of Joseph Newgarden. Dixon still hanging on in there, and if the opportunity or the plan here is to go for the undercut, it's definitely within a chance to work here, as he is within 1.6 seconds. If you look at Alex Dunn having a little bit of a lock-up through the chicane, but he's perfectly fine and in a fair amount of space there. He's gradually pulling away from Alex Palou, although there is quite some gap between himself and Kobayashi just up ahead. Still further on back, Rast continues to close on Stuvik, although if he carries on making mistakes like that he probably won't be, but it's now down to 1.1 seconds between himself and the Thai driver. In the meantime, Kobayashi closing onto the back of Freins in 5th position. Here's Dixon, he's had a bit of a regroup, he's closed in by 2 tenths onto Van Gisbergen this lap, and Elvin Evans having another lock-up, this time into Massenet. Yeah, and the call is coming in. Scott Dixon wants to pit now, and he does so. He closed within 1.4 seconds to Van Gisbergen, so has he done enough to get the undercut? And that's Newgarden slowing. Joseph Newgarden slowing in the tunnel, and Palou having a handful of understeer going through to back. Frines is in the pit lane as well, alongside Dixon. Kobayashi's gone through, and so has Rast. And it's an electrical failure there for Joseph Newgarden. So 6 retirements now. Back at the front, it is still Van Gisbergen. Dixon's now pitted and is going to try the undercut. He's slotted, or came out in between Kobayashi and Alex Dunn. He's got a fair amount of space between himself and the two drivers. So free air to push. I think if Van Gisbergen doesn't pit sometime soon, he's going to find himself behind Dixon. So, Van Gisbergen carries on one more lap. Here's René Rast still on the back end of Sandy Stuvik. He's been closing and closing and closing. Now, what is it across the line? So the gap is 1 second, pretty much exactly. Kobayashi pits from 4th position, so that's going to allow Dixon up through. That's one less car for Dixon to worry about. And Paul di Resta with a couple of lockups there through both parts of the chicane there. He carries on. Yonkadea pits down in 19th position. And definitely closer then is René Rast onto the back of Stuvik. Though Stuvik seeming to get a better run out of Portier. But this has been a definite resurgence here by Team Germany. Germany just were not at the races in the early part of the season, or in the first 3 races, and since the upgrade window, it would seem allegedly the team has focused mostly on downforce as a result of having both Germany and Monaco on the calendar, which are very downforce heavy circuits. So here is Sandy Stuvik in 2nd position, still hanging on, it seems, to 2nd place with Rast behind, and it just seems that Team Thailand car just manages to punch its way out of corners a lot better than the Germany car. And obviously if Germany are running more downforce, they're going to have far greater advantage through the corners, but when it comes into the straights, of which there aren't too many of them here in Monaco, there definitely is an advantage for the Thai car ahead. Back through the Rascasse. Anyone opting to pit yet? No. Aitken with some issues. Seems like the Team Scotland car not best made for this Monaco circuit. Both drivers struggling with understeer and locking the brakes up through some of these tight and twisted corners. And that's Yamamoto into the wall. So Yamamoto into the wall from 7th position. He's just about managed to hang on to 7th position ahead of Larson. Kobayashi up in amongst it. Obviously Kobayashi has pitted and he's found himself stuck in amongst this battle. No blue flags for these guys because they're all fighting for position here. Back towards the front, it is still Rast hunting down Stuvik for that 2nd position. Van Gisbergen 13 seconds ahead of Stuvik, out in the lead. Dixon has taken another 3 seconds out of Van Gisbergen, so I think Van Gisbergen is going to find himself a good few seconds behind Dixon when he comes out of pit lane, as we look to Dixon now as he rounds Raskas into Anthony Nogues. And down the straight he comes. Where is Van Gisbergen? Van Gisbergen hasn't come out of pit lane yet. You just see him emerging just there, and he's going to be a good few seconds there. You can see in the background, that's Van Gisbergen. So we'll wait until we go through the next timing sector as they do now. Evans is pitted. Is the 2 Team Scotland cars together. So here is Dixon in 3rd position. Obviously happy with the team's work and the team's strategy. It just means he's going to have to hold on to those tyres a little bit longer than his teammate. But catching is one thing, passing is quite another here in Monaco. And here's Nick de Vries having a bit of an issue there through the hairpin, actually drifting the car out of the hairpin. René Rast pits from 2nd position. Stuvik carries on. That now promotes Dixon and Van Gisbergen. Van Gisbergen, who has actually managed to close a little bit on Dixon on that previous lap. The gap over 3 seconds, and who's that coming out of pit lane? Schumacher goes up into 5th. So that was René Rast exiting pit lane, and he's going to find his way behind the slower Schumacher, who's going to be on older tyres. You'd hope some team orders would be involved, as Rast is Schumacher's teammate and is the permanent driver there as it stands. Whether or not the team opt to go for Schumacher over Lotterer for the foreseeable future, we will find out. But Dixon in 2nd position, pushing on. He is gradually being caught by Van Gisbergen. The gap is now down to 2.4 seconds as Stuvik comes into pit lane. And as Stuvik comes into pit lane, the leaders are already coming through, so they've lost so much time there by staying out as long as they have. That's Kobayashi having great difficulty there by the looks of things through the swimming pool section. Stuvik and Schumacher in pit lane. We expect to see Stuvik, and he is out of pit lane ahead of Rast. So the undercut not working there for Rast. Obviously Rast was stuck behind his own teammate of Schumacher, so that has not helped him. Larson into the wall. And that looks like, yeah, there's a wheel missing, and oh, he's been collected by another driver. I think that was one of the Scottish cars there. And it was just a incident there, De Vries going into the back of him and taking the rear wheel off. I think Larson would have actually got away with it if it weren't for the fact that De Vries managed to pile into the back of him as well. But both rear wheels missing. And a disqualification there by De Vries, and I think that's somewhat harsh really, as they kind of both went off at the same time. But all these stewards' decisions can be appealed by the managers. As Alex Dunn struggling again through the chicane, holding on to that 8th position, happily ahead of Hansen. Hansen, who was at one point leading this championship, it seems like Team England have lost their way a little bit after this first upgrade window. Here is Alex Palou in 7th position, pretty much all on his own. Alex Dunn 3 seconds behind him, and he's got nearly 10 seconds to Frines just ahead. That's Kobayashi getting it all wrong through the chicane. Being reminded that he's still doing quite an impressive drive in the Team Japan car, and he has got Frines just behind, but 2 seconds away. Here's Stuvik still under pressure from Rast. Rast is not going to be particularly happy. He's going to be angry to the fact that the undercut didn't work. He feels that that 3rd position should surely be his. He's just going to have to work a little bit harder in this second half of the race. Here is back at the front. Van Gisbergen has really closed onto the back of Dixon now. He's going to be within the slipstream coming through the tunnel. It looks like Dixon getting a far better exit out of Portier, and through the chicane they come now. Van Gisbergen still managing to close the gap through that sector from 1.1 seconds to 0.7 of a second. Van Gisbergen surely will be frustrated by the fact that the team favoured the strategy towards Dixon. Dixon was allowed to pull the undercut off on him, but Van Gisbergen does have the tyre advantage in this situation. Dixon feeding back to the team, the tyres not feeling good in this situation. Is that true, or is that a bluff from the experienced Kiwi driver? So we look back to Ella Lloyd, who is still, as it stands, on course to score a solitary point down in 15th position for Team Wales. But here is Dixon locking up into the chicane. That's going to give Van Gisbergen a bit more of a sniff as they come down to back. But no real overtaking opportunities for the remainder of the lap. But Van Gisbergen is doing all the right things, just pressing Dixon in to try and make more and more mistakes. And as I said that, he makes another mistake. He goes into the wall at Anthony Nodes, and that's allowed Van Gisbergen through into the lead. So Scott Dixon, the unflappable Kiwi, has made one too many mistakes. This is not what we're used to seeing from Dixon, the multiple IndyCar champion, known for his consistency, but he's been fairly inconsistent here in Monaco, and what was looking like an odds-on win. I mean, the race isn't over yet, as Lee Watanabe does the same thing into Anthony Nodes. Can Dixon respond with anything to Van Gisbergen? It stands at the moment, Van Gisbergen extending his advantage on this lap. He's pulled the gap out to 1.9 seconds. Here's Hansen having a little bit of a lock-up there into Portier. That almost gave Schumacher a sniff into 9th position. And another lock-up into the chicane, so Schumacher is now all over the back of the English driver. So here is Dixon. Somehow knew that was going to happen. He was pushing hard to try and stay ahead of Van Gisbergen. This is somewhat not what the team manager wants to be seeing, though. He has both his cars, first and second, but both pushing each other for the win. Ideally, he wants to see both of them cross the finish line, and not just one of them. Or it could end up none of them. And with that mistake there from Van Gisbergen, that's allowed Dixon to close up into 1.6 seconds. So 4/10 of a second he's gained as a result of that mistake from Van Gisbergen there. It really has been a case this weekend here in Monaco. Usually drivers tend to trade fastest laps as they fight for the lead. It seems to be they've been trading mistakes. Here is Sandy Stuvik still holding on to that third position ahead of René Rast. Rast 1.1 seconds behind Stuvik. Here's Alvin Evans, a little bit of a lock-up through the swimming pool section there, but nothing untowards. Still lives to fight another day. So we look back at the front, and actually, we were saying that, but Lee Watanabe's decided to have a lock-up into Massenet. Still holding on ahead of De Vries, and that's something you wouldn't expect to be saying. There's Lloyd just about holding on to that 15th position ahead of Paul di Resta. Here's the leaders have crossed the line. There are now 10 laps left to go in this Monaco Grand Prix. Look back there to Stuvik, still pushing the envelope. opening the gap a little bit more to Rast behind, and Rast making a lock up there into Casino Square. Not going to be wanting too many of those. So through yet another intermediate, the gap starting to grow once again between Van Gisbergen and Dixon. It is out to 2.3 seconds. And Rast appears to be losing time still to Stuvik for that battle for third position. Doesn't want to be losing too much, or else he'll fall into the clutches of Kamui Kobayashi in fifth. Alex Dunn, despite the lockups, still no pressure from behind, but he's not too far off the back of Alex Palou in seventh. Lloyd with a lockup there. It managed to pull out some gap onto or over De Resta, but all that hard work has now been unravelled through the swimming pool section. Well, I say that, and De Resta goes off into the barriers at Anthony Noakes. That's allowed Junker Dare, I think that is, to go through into 16th position. That's given Lloyd some breathing space. Now James Collado behind De Resta, and it seems like I think De Resta may have an issue here because he seems to be slowing quite considerably. But back towards the front end as Lloyd struggles once more with that hairpin. De Resta is now last car to be circulating, so definitely has an issue. It's whether or not he can get the car back to pit lane before it expires. And there is confirmation, De Resta out at Portier. Yellow flags briefly out for Van Gisbergen, who has extended his advantage over Dixon to 3.1 seconds. Dixon saying that something feels very odd, so I hope there isn't a problem developing for the Kiwi driver. Car locking up through the chicane. He's still losing even more time to Van Gisbergen ahead. He still seems to be going along just nicely as it stands at the moment. No obvious car failures, but is there something developing for Dixon? Who is continuing to lose quite a lot of time. Van Gisbergen, he's lost another 10th through that sector. But Dixon just has to nurse the car through these last handful of laps. He's got a fairly comfortable advantage to Stuvik behind. Stuvik being told that Dixon may have an issue, and that's Junker Dare into the barriers. So Anthony knows, not being the favoured corner for most drivers, there's been a lot of lockups going into there, so I don't know if there's something laid from one of the previous races. Perhaps some oil or some form of fluids that weren't quite caught by the marshals. And that's Philip Hansen going deep into Portier, and that's allowed Schumacher to go side by side through the tunnel, and Schumacher thinks better of it, backs out of it. But it definitely looks like he's got the pace over the English driver ahead. As we look now, as we take yet another lap off. Schumacher still chasing down Hansen, but has got Yamamoto for company just behind. But out in front, Van Gisbergen must have made some sort of mistake somewhere. Although saying that, Dixon has lost masses of time there, and he's got a loose wheel. Scott Dixon, who was leading this race, finds himself with a loose wheel. I don't think he's going to manage to make it back to pit lane. And he comes to a stop just at the entrance of La Rascasse. He only had one corner to go to get to pit lane, but that is Dixon out of this Grand Prix of Monaco. That promotes Stuvik into second and Rast into third. So Van Gisbergen can be nice and comfy as Yamamoto with a lock-up on the exit of their swimming pool section. You can see Schumacher just up the road from him. On board now with Stuvik, who has got Rast for company just behind, although has opened a little bit of a gap to the German driver. Comes out of the chicane once again. No issues there. Here is Van Gisbergen, who has the best part of 18 seconds ahead of Stuvik. Van Gisbergen can really afford to nurse the car now. 4 laps remaining. And that's Yamamoto into the barriers there. Bit of an odd collision with the wall, but still carries on. Has got Lee Watanabe all over the back of him now for 10th position. Here's Elman Evans chasing down James Collado for 16th position now. Back towards the front, although we then cut to Alex Dunn, who's having all sorts of issues coming out of the hairpin. Another lock up there through the chicane, but still a comfortable 7th position as it stands, as Junkadea narrowly avoids the wall there. Complaining about the tyres, and I think a lot of other drivers have done the same so far. Here is Rast, 1.5 seconds. That's Junkadea struggling out again. So we've now got a train of Junkadea, Collado and Elvin Evans. A few laps remain, and it is Yamamoto we're looking at here. It's pulling away from Lee Watanabe, trying to close in on Schumacher and Hansen just ahead. There's Ella Lloyd currently in 14th position. Another strong performance here. 2 points on the board. It is Jack Aitken just up ahead, and it's got a decent gap to Junkadea behind. But here is Stuvik. He has a Rast less than a second behind. And there's Frines. Not sure if he quite made contact with the ball there, but he got very close to. Apparently it's floating in 5th position. So here is Rast. Once again, the main opportunity to pass in this Monaco Grand Prix is down into the chicane, and that German car just does not have the power advantage over Stuvik. Stuvik with a much better drive, which is allowing him to stay ahead. Mistake there by Schumacher. That's opened the door for an opportunity from Yamamoto, but Yamamoto not able to capitalise on that. So as they come to start the final lap of the race, it's still Van Gisbergen way out in front, with Sandy Stuvik in second, and barring any mistake, he's going to stay ahead of René Rast. There's a second between Stuvik and Rast for second and third position. So all it will take is a mistake in the right place by Stuvik to allow Rast through. Here's Van Gisbergen coming through the tunnel for one last time, down into the chicane. Nearly a 20-second advantage to Stuvik. Through this swimming pool section for one more time. It looks, as it stands, that Stuvik is going to be holding on to that second position ahead of Rast, barring any mistakes. But round Anthony Nodes for one last time, and down the start-finish straight, Shane Van Gisbergen comes across the line to win here in Monaco and the Division 1 feature race. A great result there for New Zealand, at least for one of their drivers. And here is Sandy Stuvik holding on to second position, so a great result for Stuvik, with René Rast in third position. Another solid performance there from the German driver. Kobayashi across the line in fourth, and this should be Robin Frines, and indeed it is, to cross the line in fifth. Just waiting for the rest of the field to come on through. There's Hansen, Schumacher holding on ahead of Yamamoto, who rounds out the top 10. Yeah, across the line. Ella Lloyd scoring 2 points, and Junkadea to be the final points paying position, 15th. And that is race over. Everyone across the line. So confirmation of the results here. It is Shane Van Gisbergen who has won from Sandy Stuvik, and René Rast in third, Kamui Kobayashi finishes in 4th, with Robin Frijns in 5th, Alex Palou in 6th, Alex Dunn in 7th. Philip Hansen comes into 8th, with Mick Schumacher on potentially his one-off appearance, finishes in 9th, and Yamamoto with the final top 10 position. Lee Watanabe scores points in 11th, with Jack Aitken in 12th and Ella Lloyd in 13th. Daniel Juncker comes 14th, with James Collado taking the final point there in 15th position, Elvin Evans in 16th. Scott Dixon failed to finish with the loose wheel, Paul di Resta with the electrical failure. Larson was also out with Newgarden, Van Dorn, Hart, Pagenaud, Bourdais, and the disqualifications come as Dries van Thor and Nick de Vries. So after what was again another dramatic Grand Prix here in Monaco, it is back to Chris.
What a brilliant drive from Shane van Gisbergen, riding high here in Monaco. Congratulations to the New Zealand team. Commiserations though to Scott Dixon with that result at the end. Bit of a shame. But yeah, what another brilliant race. And we can now see what that does for the Division 1 standings. Philip Hansen is still on top, but his lead that was once 21 points is now only 12 points. Alex Palou now in second place, René Rast in third with 13 behind Philip Hansen. Scott Dixon, he will be ruing at the fact that he couldn't finish today. He is 20 points behind Philip Hansen. Sandy Stuvik in 5th with 61 points, another very solid result for him. Naoki Yamamoto on 59 points. Shane van Gisbergen with that terrific victory is now on 56. Alex Dunn is now on 53. Sebastian Bourdais in 46. Carl Larson also in 46. Daniel Juncker on 39 points. Simon Pagenaud on 35, Joseph Newgarden on 34, and then we see both Scott's cars still together on 33 and 29 points respectively. Nick de Vries on 27 points, Stoffel van Dorn on 26, Dries van Toor on 24, Andre Lotterer on 22, he can now return should he please, and then Max Hart on 22, James Collado on 21, Robin Frijns on 18 points, not a bad haul of points for only 2 races into the Nations Cup. Kamui Kobayashi on 14, Elfyn Evans on 12, Mick Schumacher on 11 points from today, and then Ella Lloyd on 9, and then we have Natalie Leeuwen-Navarro on 6 points, Tadasuke Makino at 5, Tam Bourdais on 3, Mark Housens with 1, and then Alex Lindbergh and Vanina X both collecting 0 points. And we can now see what that does to the nations standings. New Zealand have taken the lead to 9 points ahead of Spain on 114. England are now on 108. Germany on 107 points. It's all very close at the top there. France on 81. USA on 80. Japan on 78. Ireland 75. Thailand 67. Scotland 62. Belgium 51. Netherlands 48. And then Wales with 21. So it's all very close at that bottom end of the standings. And just like that, the Monaco Grand Prix has passed. What a brilliant bunch of races that we had. Quite dramatic in a lot of senses and a lot of chaos. And some terrific winners. And again, congratulations to Ed Hunter on a fantastic victory. But now we can look ahead at the next race, which is going to be at Spa-Francorchamps, another fabled circuit in the world. And that'll be same day, same time in a fortnight's time. I am Chris Kavaney, your host. Ryan Ferris has been your commentator. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and this is the Nations Cup signing off.